I'm not ready.
I forgot. Fuck off.
Nobody's ready for Cat Power. Ladies and gentlemen, you listen to This Song Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Fraser, and this is the most excited I've been about a record in a really long time.
Maximum distortion.
To my right is Chris Cusack, also known as Dog Force.
Dog Force?
Or
oh my god, that got my tail wagging so hard.
Dog Force 1. That's what it's called, car.
Hi, Chris.
Wow. See, why does David always get to go first? Because
I don't know. I don't
I
make
just get in
the
there
rules,
first.
man. I don't make the rules. He just gets there first, man.
To my left's David. He thinks he's so funny and gets in there first and then makes it really difficult for me. Maybe I'll go first next week, David, and maybe next week's will be hilarious.
Okay.
I can
That's fine.
say it in the future. And I can tell you that's not going to happen.
No, my ears are down.
Do you have a synonym for me? Hamster vigor.
No.
Hernia boy.
No, give me a second here. I can edit this down anyways to make it sound like I come up with it in a matter of seconds. Ambassador Mirth Weasel.
Yep, I'm happy with that. Okay.
Seamless.
And Mark, you
see how
are
quickly I came up with that, by the way.
you are Cat Power.
Cat Power.
Cat Power fan.
Wow.
Number one.
You know what's really scary? It
Single
didn't
one.
actually click why David had said Dog Force, and now I feel really fucking
Oh, so
You
many
just
people.
enjoyed it on its own.
I am such a himbo.
That peaked so hard.
So yeah, this week we're doing Cat Power and her record You Are Free.
Don't be in love with the autograph. Just be in love when you scream that song on a free.
Wow. Once more with feeling.
Which is a record.
It definitely is a record that exists.
That
I
exists.
can confirm that as being true.
I'll take it from here, guys. Yeah, so this was my choice. So
Yeah.
Mark got his notes out, and they're mainly just doodles of unhappy smileys.
Basically, yeah.
Yep, You Are Free by Cat Power, her sixth album. Cat Power, whose real name is Chan Marshall, or Charlene Marie Marshall, as Wikipedia told me this week, which I'd never bothered to look up. Cat Power is pretty famous and pretty weird. Like, she's an eccentric personality, and I thought it was a really interesting subject to bring up now, because she's an artist that maybe not so much in her latter career, from an album called The Greatest onwards. It was about 2006 when things got a bit slicker, but certainly prior to that was probably known as much for her sort of eccentricities and her erratic live performances as she was for anything else.
I read about those live performances. It seemed like it was a bit of a mess.
Yeah, we'll go into the live stuff in a bit more detail, but this sort of skipped the queue a wee bit based on our previous kind of episode order that we had in mind, because of things that happened in Glasgow recently. So David's back with us this week after missing a week, partly due to the death of our kind of common friend, but certainly a closer friend to David, in Scott Hutchison from Frightened Rabbit. As has been pretty well documented by this point, Scott had an ongoing struggle with mental illness and depression, and I think Cat Power seemed like a fitting lens via which to look at the music industry and how, especially amongst people with pre-existing conditions and a propensity towards depression and a propensity towards things like nervous disorders and such like, that music can be a particularly unforgiving occupation. And I think it would be hard to imagine that many people in those situations, Scott included, would benefit from the schedules, the lack of sort of
Structure.
the lack of groundedness, the fact that so many tour musicians find it hard even just to kind of keep a premises, you know, unless, I mean, if you get to the level where your income's good, then you can have an apartment that's paid for. But for a lot of people, certainly people on the way up, and I'd imagine people on the way down as well, who struggle to pay things like rent, you can find that you're touring without any permanent residence.
Yep.
You know, and you can also find it takes a great toll on relationships, not to mention families. and even the opportunity to have a family, so people can be into their mid to late 30s, 40s, when things start to wane and suddenly they realise that they're going home and everybody else who initially was left behind, inverted commas, suddenly has moved on with their life. And these are some of the realities, I think, of music that are quite often overlooked. And when that mixes with the hyper availability of alcohol on tour, very often the availability of drugs of various strengths, as well as the tiredness and the need to use those drugs, the need to self-medicate because you can't get to a doctor, and you perhaps don't have antidepressants or something's been undiagnosed. There's so many different factors that can contribute. We'll go into this in a bit more detail later on in this episode, but certainly in light of the circumstances around Scott's death and the fact that so many people tried for so long to help Scott, not least of all his friends and definitely his family, and because of Scott's talent as a musician, we're definitely up against it, because it's a very, very difficult circumstance. It's hard at the best of times, and it's hard in the most stable and predictable of circumstances. So to try and be there for someone who's never physically there because of other obligations, especially obligations that they want to fulfill because it feels like they're calling, it can be a really difficult and complicated blend of factors. Now, Chan Marshall, Cat Power, has been a very high profile example of somebody with a clear underlying condition who has nevertheless survived, but not without some very well documented brushes with extreme moments. And I would wager has veered scarily close to some of the more dangerous times over the years. So yeah, we'll address that a bit more, but that's why this is kind of skipped the queue, and it seems fitting because it's sort of the elephant in the room when you're talking about music, especially when, for example, you're like us and you're talking about future albums that you might want to include in the unsung roster, and you start to realise that 1 in every 3 or 4 albums features somebody who took their own life, and you're like, wow, this is definitely something that needs to get touched on and represented. But Cat Power is actually, she's alive and well, I hope, at the time of going to air. She has a lot of records at this point, and Cards on the Table, not all of those records are particularly good, in my opinion. You Are Free is one that stands out to me as being particularly suitable for Unsung because it's the moment that an artist, as I see it, found her voice, found her musical identity. There are 5 albums prior, including a covers album, and the covers album is actually very good, but the 4 albums before that, I think, document various levels of attainment without ever actually getting it right. And then subsequently, from The Greatest onwards, there's a bit of commercial success, and then what I would suggest is perhaps a slight decline, like maybe a confusion of priorities, and perhaps just a better personal well-being, although that seems debatable given the circumstances that unfolded, but certainly a movement into a more commercial direction that I don't think produced results that were as rewarding or as sincere. This is a very, very naked album. It takes a bit of work to enjoy it. It's not something where it's like banger after banger and you're not going to slam it into the middle of a DJ set anytime soon. But with that investment, with that digging, it's really rewarding. I kind of sprung it on you guys. I don't think you had heard it at all.
I'd heard bits of Cat Power.
Yeah.
I was actually more aware of Moonpix. I'd heard that a couple of times.
So Moonpix was their 4th album, and a lot of people credit that as being like the breakthrough record.
Yeah, it was certainly the one that got her the sort of critical acclaim in the 90s and gave her legitimacy as a real talent. But I hadn't really heard You Are Free. But it was funny actually talking about Scott. I think Moonpix was a record that for Cat Power, she talked about how sort of her failings as a person and stuff like that, which is something that Scott was very open with. Just lyrically, she sort of took a little break. She did that covers record. And yeah, You Are Free, I mean, it is quite a downbeat record.
There's no getting away from it,
you know,
man.
and this has been quite a downbeat couple of weeks, you know, for a lot of people in Glasgow and for me personally. So I have struggled to get into it in terms of, do I want to listen to a sad records for another 45 minutes of my life?
It's pretty heavy,
yeah,
to say the least.
but I've been dipping in and out of it because I just can't deal with the feeling of it for, you know, a full hour. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, going in and out of it. There's some just really beautiful parts of it. There's some really interesting bits as well, just tracks that are way more interesting and weird than I thought there would be, you know, just straightforward, you know, singer-songwriter stuff.
I mean, she wrote apparently there was 40 tracks recorded for this album, and they whittled it down. Like it
Yeah.
was a lot. It took a year to write, and it was a lot of sessions in different places. Like as she was touring, as she was traveling, in different states of mind, and different moods, and different, you know, highs and lows. When you consider that it's been cherry picked from those sessions, she's obviously tried to say something with it. Given that I'm sure there were more upbeat songs recorded at various points. Not all the songs are downbeat, you know. There's a couple of a couple of numbers that skip along, but she obviously felt that the downbeat songs best represented this period of her life.
Be Free Freedom is like a recurring theme.
Yeah, throughout that.
all the record.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the first notes I wrote about this album. It's just this constant mention of freedom and free. At least 4 or 5 songs in this album have that as a lyric. And then there's the title, and it's just kind of an interesting take on it. Like, what did you make of it musically, Mark? Because I know you were a total newbie.
I didn't like it to begin with. First couple of times I listened to it, I was like, this record just barely exists. It's kind of it's kind of in my purview, and it has to be, but I'm not enjoying it. But it was then I listened to it a couple more times, and I found it started to reveal itself to me. And I don't think I would have given it more time if it wasn't for this podcast. It's very bluesy, I think, both in spirit and a lot of the songwriting sort of nous on it too. There's a lot of really interesting attention to detail as well, which kind of little flourishes or little kind of extra things in songs which don't really need to be there, but just bring it to the next level. We'll go into the track list in a minute, obviously, but there's definitely some songs on it which I think could probably get taken off, and we'll probably cover that too.
Yeah, I wouldn't fall out with that either. But it's you say that it's not really there. It is a kind of whisper of an album. It's totally understated.
I think it's really interesting how she can write 40 songs for a record and still decide to put 2 covers on it. I think that's remarkable.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that about the blues, because her dad, Charlie Marshall, was a blues pianist, and like her upbringing was really religious. She went to Baptist church, although I think her dad was actually a Jehovah's Witness. But she'd spent a lot of time doing kind of hymnal and various forms of gospel stuff. So that does still come through in a lot of what she does. You know, she never actually intended to be a musician. Like her whole thing about getting into music was social. Like she's quite open about that. She started a band. The band was originally called Cat Power. Supposedly got their name off of a trucker's cap who walked into a diner when they were sitting there. Caterpillar, the machinery, the heavy plant machinery. But the band was originally just a means for her to make friends and have something to do, and then became just her. And to be honest, I feel it really shows. Our first couple of albums, Dear Sir and Myra Lee, I think are really weak. I've tried really hard with them as someone that appreciates them. I just can't get much out of them. They were recorded by Steve Shelley, the Sonic Youth drummer, who I think saw her at a Liz Fair show, I think it was. She was supporting in like 93 in New York City. Steve Shelley got involved and did these 2 records in the same session, and then they were released a year apart in 95 and 96.
Said it wasn't, but I guess it. Here they go again, I can try.
And I'm not sure what Steve saw in her, to be honest. At that point, the voice is pretty weak. There was obviously some charisma. I know that even then she had a stage persona that was quite intense, although it could be intense in, I'd imagine, a lot of the wrong ways. But on the back of that, she was signed to Matador in 96 and did What Would the Community Think, which for a lot of Cat Power fans is a big record. You know, it's one of those kind of obscure early career records that some people really latch onto, and they're like, I'm a true Cat Power enthusiast because I love this album. And again, that was produced by Shelley. But I find that early stuff really difficult. I mean, I think the LA Weekly at the time, really early on, christened her the Queen of Sadcore, which is obviously is consistent with you guys' early impressions of her. Maybe she's deliberately worked to shake that, but she certainly wasn't working to shake that up to this album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not very obvious that it's a blues record either. I mean, its genre listed online has been indie rock, which is weird because it's not. But it's definitely close to being a blues record than anything more than anything else. And it's also got a lot of gospel vibe on it, I think, as well.
I think
vocally.
indie rock's probably influenced more by tracks like He War, because
He War and Shaking Paper.
but where the
Right.
drums are involved, and there's more.
But it's funny how like you have like 2, 3, 4 tracks on an album that's as sparse as this that are like that, and then from the outside you think they're the ones that stand out, so that's what the album's like.
They're probably the
But
tracks that got the most play though.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas I really like those tracks. I love He War, but they're like a break in this record. You know, the real sort of feel of this record is sort of morose, very intimate. Yeah, you're right. There is a sort of bluesy thoughtfulness to it.
Hey, guess what, Mark? He War. Dave Grohl.
Dave Grohl.
He's back.
I was actually just about to say that. I don't like the production at all on He War. I don't think it sounds very good.
There's a couple. Because it was recorded across different studios in different towns at different times over the course of a year. There's quite a fluctuation. I mean, it's credit to whoever mastered the album. So the mastering engineer obviously gets handed all these tapes. Like, this is the sequence for the album. Make it sound consistent.
Yeah,
and they've done a good job with that in mind, because the sessions must have been wildly different.
Yeah.
Wildly different when you consider even just the instrumentation, the different things.
Got a Stonesy feel, that song, kind of bluesy rock.
Yeah, it does. I'm not a big Stones fan, but I mean, I do like that tune in particular, and it is one that provides a kind of good access point, given that it's a wee bit more straight down the line.
Yeah. It's got Mr. Grohl on it. Yeah.
Those Foo Fighters, they just won't stay out of our podcast, will they?
Yeah.
They just won't take a hint.
I need to do something about that. I've got an idea for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to call it the Foo Fighters Nexus. It's like 6 degrees of separation for Dave Grohl, and obviously he's number one. There's one jump on this record for him, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. But is he not on, like, he plays guitar and he plays bass and drums?
He plays
on this
guitar
song.
and bass on, I think, Shaking Paper. Yeah.
He plays drums on a couple of tracks as well, and keeping the grunge spirit alive. Eddie Vedder's on a couple of tracks as well. His back vocal on the last song, is fucking tremendous. It doesn't even sound like him.
He's been caught leaving. Better call the guys on the deck.
Eddie Vedder's on a couple of tracks in this. It's also got Warren Ellis with the Dirty Three in it.
Yeah.
And like the Bad
Nick
Seeds.
Cave's band.
Yeah, and
it's got
it had.
Beck's dad does the string arrangements on 2 songs, David Campbell.
There's a reason for that as well. I don't know. Like, so maybe it's just some weird coincidence. So she was married to Giovanni Ribisi. Giovanni Ribisi is a Scientologist. Giovanni Ribisi's twin sister, is married to Beck.
And David Campbell has been a Scientologist for 45 years.
There must be something to that.
Yeah, there must be.
There must be something to that.
He does. I think, does he not do the orchestration on Werewolf?
Yeah, could well be.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I've got that written. Yeah, and that really makes that track like fucking next level, man.
Yeah.
I know, body know, body know, body knows how to love a man.
Talking about 33 as well. See on Moonpix, they had the other 2 of the 33. Mick Turner and Jim White played on that one. I believe Jim White was just given finished tracks and told to drum over them, which must be incredibly difficult.
So weird.
I mean, it's one thing drumming and then the guitarist playing over it, but it's another thing the guitarist playing this fluctuating timing and then handing it to a drummer to do freeform drums over it.
Can you see? Can you see? Can you see?
It's really weird that you brought this record up, right? Because I don't know if you guys watch Legion, the TV show.
No, haven't seen it.
Well, there was an episode that aired at the start of May, and what happens in it is one of the bad guys is like digging in a desert looking for like a weapon, and while they're digging up the weapon, Werewolf by Cat Power is playing.
Oh, really?
And I was like, I remember when I heard that today, I was like, fuck, I've heard that before, but where?
Where?
Yeah.
Wolf?
Where? Wolf? Yeah, it's a Michael Hurley cover. So
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Talking about Giovanni Ribisi as well, she did a charity single, which was, I think, a re-recording of King Rides By from What Would the Community Think. The video was directed by Giovanni Ribisi, and the video features Manny Pacquiao.
As you do.
That's pretty strange, right?
how do you even ask him?
Fuck it, like, hi Manny, fucking, I'm this morose acoustic singer-songwriter getting in this. Like, I'd have thought he'd have been in like a video for like Samba.
Is that a cultural stereotype?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But luckily, because people donate so much to this show, we can afford a lawyer to advise me to cut that out.
Yeah. Shout out to Colin O'Hara and Bruce and Dave and Lyle Bruce for giving us £5 each.
Keeping this ship afloat.
Keeping this
for
ship
one more
afloat.
week. Hi folks, this is the moment where we interrupt what is undoubtedly the finest podcast you've heard this week to ask for your money, because if you don't give us money, we're going to start doing things like the early album by Texas and the later album by Coldplay. Coldplay had a later album, didn't they?
Yes. Even worse.
Multiple later
Even worse than the first one. They had that third one, Dark Days, which is awful too.
I was at a wedding recently where someone danced to a later era Coldplay tune for their first dance, and I was just like, I'm never getting married. So we spoke about this a bit during the Dundee mixtape, and the idea was, if you like the podcast, maybe chuck us a quid. If you really like the episode, a couple of quid. If you really don't like the episode, we'll come round and do your dishes. But there has to be a bit of give and take. So think about it. unsungpod.net/donate, and we'll avoid songs that go, you can say what you want, but I won't.
Oh, Texas. I've accidentally seen Texas 4 times.
Accident.
Every time I go to a park, they just start playing. Oh, it's a nightmare.
Don't be like Dave. Obviously, the content of Cat Power Tracks is incredibly personal.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big focus, I think, put on her love life. She's famously an ex-girlfriend of Bill Callahan.
It's so unfair. That only happens to women, really.
But I was about to say that, yeah. So why is that? You know, why is there such a focus on the ex-partners or current partners of female musicians? Because I know, I don't know why I know, but I know that Bill Callahan went out with Cat Power for ages, and I know that he was involved with Jana Newsom, and I'm like, but I don't know who Beck went out with.
Yeah. Do you know?
That is Giovanni Ribisi's.
Do you know who Dave Grohl went out with, for fuck's sake? Like Kathleen Hanna and the bass player for L7, and it's like so many people, you know, and nobody ever talks about
It's
it.
because of the fucking patriarchy, mate.
The patriarchy, you see.
It's because, I know it's fucking ridiculous. Like, women are defined by their relationships with men, but not vice versa.
It must be even.
Which is-
It's. I think it's even more perverse because there's obviously songs in this record where she talks about like past relationships.
Yeah, I mean, she does. I think there's quite a lot refers to a guy called Daniel Curry, who was a model that she spent a lot of time in. I think she referred to him at some point in an interview as the ex-love of her life. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit perverse.
It is, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and does only seem to be a one-way street.
I also...
So what's this patriarchy you're talking about? Should I be looking out?
it's a new nightclub in Glasgow.
Fucking, it's not that far off.
No, but also in terms of how she's perceived, I read the original Pitchfork review for this record, and oh fucking hell, I hated it. It was like they give her a really good. It was like 8.9 or something, and it was very supportive of the record. But there was just something about it where it, you know, she is a woman, and we're going to judge this record of her as a woman, and you know that talked about how she changes, you know, how she looks all the time and stuff like that. And it didn't do it in a way that was talking about her study of herself. And I really did not enjoy the review at all.
Have they taken that down since and replaced it with one that's a little bit more acceptable?
It's on the Wayback Machine. It's on the Internet Archive. You can look at it. That you can't look at it on their Pitchfork.
We've got your number, Pitchfork. We know the truth.
Yeah. So,
you're not as nearly as zeitgeisty as you think you are.
Are they? Fuck.
Actually, it's interesting to go a wee bit meta on that, right? So when Cat Power started doing well, have you heard of a singer called Lana Del Rey?
Yeah.
A couple of folk might know that.
I think
I've heard of her.
I think so.
So there was a really interesting article, I think it was in the Big Issue, which is a magazine in Scotland where a certain percentage of the proceeds go to help the homeless.
It's in UK.
In the UK.
But it's not out in London.
We're in Scotland, though. Care about the rest of them. But I think they did an article some time ago about Lana Del Rey and her evolution aesthetically, and the fact that she went through stages of image management, and originally when you see the pictures of it was pitched as this very slacker kind of Cat Power-esque character, you know, like loose fitting jeans, kind of t-shirt just hanging off, hair was kind of lank and just hanging down, very much kind of grunge chic. That didn't really take, and then they moved on to the next image, and they moved on to the next image, and by the time she got to her fourth iteration, having passed through burlesque and I think it was like bleach blonde power dress, and you know, they were like, right, you know, if this one doesn't work, then you're for the scrap heap hen. And it was that strange attitude where image management for a female artist seems to be such a big factor.
But funnily enough, it's weird that you mention that, because I do agree, and it's definitely more prevalent with, you know, with female artists.
Yeah, because you can't get famous if you're a woman and you look like Ed Sheeran. You can get famous if you're a man and you look like Ed Sheeran.
But what's interesting is the connection there with Lana Del Rey used to go out with Barry O'Neill, a member of the Scottish band Cassidy.
Cassidy, you say?
And Cassidy were a band who also went through a wide range of looks and vibes.
They had a strong denim and beard phase.
Well, that was the band, and then there were a different band before then, and then after that they split up and became another band that was a different vibe. And
what band's that?
White.
Oh, yeah.
Some members of that band were in, but like they were always a band that attempted something and a look and a feel, and then if it didn't succeed, they'd try something else.
I have a question.
Which is interesting.
What does a Vibe Master General think of that?
Yes, Chris, the Vibe Master General. That's what we've decided your job is.
Yeah. Anyone I know that's listening to this right now is groaning and just trying to fast forward. I have a real issue with that. It's incredibly inauthentic, and that's not to say I don't like artists who have striking looks, and I'm not naive enough to think that they landed in those looks first time.
What about David Bowie? He always reinvented himself. Isn't he cool? He's an artist.
Certainly. I think the thing is, though, with David Bowie, by the way.
Oh, yeah. There was a boy in my school who was called David Bowie, spelled exactly the same way. But he's in the year above me.
Called himself Bowie as opposed to Bowie.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Fucking on S.
I know he's from on S.
I think there's something very contrived about the bands that try to attain that. I think when there's pioneers such as him, there's something respectable and exciting about it.
Prince as well. I think these are image managed themselves, though. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it's a.
Yeah, I think they initially did, certainly. I think
Prince certainly did his whole career.
It'd be naive to think they continued to throughout their career, because once so much money becomes involved, there's probably a level of obligation and protection. Anyway, I mean, we could get deviated in that. I think Cat Power, her image changed with her music. I think that's quite distinct from the Lana Del Rey thing, who was somebody who they were trying to market into a niche that other people had created. Yeah. Whereas I think Cat Power was one of the people that created that niche.
Yeah, a lot of artists do change their aesthetic for each album or album cycle, just as they develop, because they get interested in things. And you know, the most clearest example of that is somebody that we talked about before was Bjork. You know, who was very.
Yeah, but there's a big distinction, I think, between changing your image in order to push the envelope and challenge yourself and your audience, as opposed to changing your image in order to be relevant at all.
Oh yeah, I agree, but I think Cat Power is of the former.
Absolutely,
along with Bjork and a lot of like great artists.
It was interesting to see another scenario where somebody was trying to kind of piggyback on that look that she had.
Yeah,
and to Cat Power, like, her image became quite a pivotal issue. So I mean, the early stuff, as nondescript as I feel it is musically, her image was very nondescript. After this album, she got into The Greatest, which was quite a big step up for her, production wise, songwriting wise. It's quite loungy. It's pretty slick. It's upbeat. There's a couple of tracks in it. Like there's one called Living Proof, and there's a track in it. Living Proof's great. There's a track called Could We, which is basically the Beautiful South. If you remember that fairly shit awful mum and dad band from the UK.
Could we take a walk? Could we have a talk alone?
They have come up before.
Yeah, they have. There's really a lot of soul in it. I mean, she cut her hair short. She got very cropped and started, dressing in dresses.
And then she got involved with Chanel.
Exactly.
Karl
That's what I was
Lagerfeld
going to say. Is it Karl Lagerfeld, I think
Yeah.
it was, who saw her outside a hotel, nonchalantly smoking a cigarette and was like, I have to have you.
What?
Yeah, so she was a model.
Yeah,
She became a model.
and she modelled neo grunge, which is relevant for us because we are doing a
Well,
grunge podcast
We're not doing a thing soon.
this Sunday,
Oh yeah, fuck.
2 days time.
Hope I'm well.
We don't give everybody shingles.
So she became kind of known for the neo grunge look, and apparently was and I had to put this in giant inverted commas in my notes, a muse for Marc Jacobs. A muse. What the fuck is Marc Jacobs talking about? What a fucking tool.
I'm cringing so hard right now.
Absolutely. I can.
Did Marc Jacobs not do the Jacobs by Marc Jacobs for Mark by Marc Jacobs or something like that? There's like an amazing thing. There's like a item of clothing and it's like 5 or 6 lines.
I've seen that. That's
Mate.
definitely a thing.
Mate, that sounds mental. That sounds like Marc Jacobs' cream crackers.
Yep.
Think about it.
That was tenuous, but I'll give
Jacobs crackers. Right. You'll lift your mark.
But yeah, so she became a spokesperson for Chanel for like 2006 once she like cut her hair and started doing this lounge music. And since then she's done adverts for like De Beers, the diamond folk who are involved in all the blood diamond controversy, and Garnier, Gap, who were involved in the sweatshop controversies, Lincoln Cars, Apple, and that singular telecom company. It's just like it's strange to watch somebody go from such inauspicious beginnings. This person who just was like fell into music and did it, I don't even know, like in such a raw and unvarnished way.
Yeah.
To then be selling
But is that
diamonds.
But is that because she was good and successful? Is that more of a surprise than somebody going in with particular values and then selling out? She didn't go in with particular values. She didn't go in saying, I'm going to be a social warrior. I'm just in this for the shits and giggles. And then it turns out she's really good and she studies herself emotionally, yes. But then,
yeah, I mean,
she gets some offers
That's a fair
commercially,
point,
and
I
she's
think.
never said that she would not go against them. So it's
yeah,
not like,
I'm not accusing her of hypocrisy in any way. I think it's just more of an interesting insight into the mentality of that market and the way it co-opts edginess and co-opts credibility and reappropriates it to stupid elitist shit like diamonds. I mean, that's like, it's that strange, perverse.
Do you know this? Funnily enough, this is pretty much what I did my dissertation on in politics. It's this reselling of values. Trasformismo is a term from Antonio Gramsci, who's an old Italian political philosopher.
This podcast just went
exactly.
Fucking just went up a level, mate.
So
I think that's a good point, but on the other hand, another way you can look at it is if she's someone that has always liked fashion and has been a fashionable person, then that's just...
she didn't come across as that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to shame the woman for her wardrobe. I just mean, like, she came across as somebody that was fairly indifferent and just dressed like a human being.
Did she though, or was that marketing?
Okay, fair point. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but I think given her very humble beginnings and working with people like Steve Shelley and the fact that she never intended to be a musician, that she ended up, she quit music prior to doing Moonpix. Like she effectively moved away, quit music, and apparently only ended up doing Moonpix because she had some super intense hypnagogic dream whereby she had some terrifying vision and wanted to kind of exorcise it via the only art that she was still up to speed on. I don't think this is a woman that set out to nurture an image. I mean, there wasn't even enough money involved in the early stage of her career to really make that worthwhile up until that point. I mean, certainly from the point where you're playing with guys like Dave Grohl and Eddie Vedder on your record, there's obviously some money involved, and the grunge aesthetic was obviously advantageous. And I can see from that point that it was no longer entirely accidental.
But what
even
we've just done
at
is we've now talked for 15-20 minutes about her that isn't the album, and about her.
We're prone to
I don't
that.
know. Yeah, I know. But I wonder if are we not just falling into that trap that we were talking about, of talking about her
Yeah, I think that's a good point. 'Cause
choices.
I was
don't
going to
know.
say, like, it's really easy to look at her from the kind of punk rock left perspective that we inevitably will look at her from. But if she's also somebody who's been interested in fashion and that comes calling, I mean,
has she though? I mean,
we don't know. So,
but
like,
this-
just because she didn't outwardly do it because she maybe couldn't afford it doesn't necessarily mean she wasn't a fan of it.
I mean, I get that point. I get the point Dave's making, and he's right to some extent. But I do feel it would be worthy of commentary. If we're being objective here, it'd be worthy of commentary if one day Neil Young came out, he'd trimmed his hair, and he was wearing suits and doing adverts for Lexus. I think that does merit commentary, and I
Yeah.
do, especially if his music then changed.
Uh-huh.
That is valid. I get.
I'm not saying it's invalid. I'm just saying there could be other reasons behind it as well.
And I'm not objecting to the issue being made, but I think it's useful to question what our motivation is for having that conversation. But I do think it's relevant because the music changed. I was like Cat Power for me as well. Since The Greatest's okay, The Greatest's pretty good in places, and it's got the actual song The Greatest, and there's a track in it called Willie as well. From then, her career is unlistenable. I mean, personally speaking, unlistenable. There's she did a second compilation of covers called Jukebox. There's a cover on it of New York, New York. It is a parody of itself. It is absolutely hackle-reasonably bad.
Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I wanna be a part of it.
And everything since, she had an album after that as well. It's just I just tapped out completely. It was odd to see somebody veer off so wildly, and dragging this all back though to where we touched on it earlier on. It does seem, however, that her mental health has benefited from that point, which I think is a really interesting juxtaposition. And whether that was an outward manifestation of the improvement in her condition, or whether by simply trying to steer herself into a slightly more, I want to say, upbeat direction.
Yeah, because I mean, so going to the lyrics on this record, they are very.
Some of them are harrowing.
Yeah, some of them are harrowing, and I Don't Blame You and Free. She starts off the record with two tracks that are about fame and about how dangerous they are. And she finally admitted, in 2012 that I Don't Blame You is just about Kurt Cobain killing himself.
Cause they wanted to hear that sound that you didn't want to play. And I don't blame you.
And, she says, I don't blame you. I can see why you did that.
Yeah, that
Very
line in
directly.
it about standing, watching him swinging his guitar,
Yeah.
and being really reluctant and not wanting to be there. Yeah, I mean,
and she said that she understood it, and that being in that public position where people adored you but didn't understand you was like being in a prison. And that, to start a record off like that is obviously very open, but maybe it was very cathartic because she's just come out and said it.
I mean, she's a woman that's drawn on a long history of trauma in that sense as well. I mean, her band started in Atlanta, but she moved to New York City, and by all accounts, it seems that the move to New York City was sort of instigated by the death of her boyfriend in Atlanta and by another close friend dying of AIDS at the time. And following that as well, Bill Callahan has, without going into any great detail, has said that their relationship was tumultuous, and she's talked about heavy substance abuse at that time as a way of like self-medication too. And that is really shown as well. I mean, it's shown in her performances. There's like a really famous performance she did at the Bowery Ballroom in New York City, I think it was in 1999, where she played a lot of the set with her nose on the floor, and like members of the audience like consoling her as she's playing, I mean, this is like a big venue.
Yeah.
And the person that you're paying to see, and given that 99% of the crowd probably can't even see her because she's face down on the ground, mumbling into the ground with people rubbing her back and trying to like stop her crying. I mean, she's famously erratic in that sense. She's cried, she blethers during it. She starts songs and kind of stops them whenever she feels like it. Apparently, I think she's mooned audiences at times. She's got into huge tirades against the crew if she's not happy. And there was like a really like notorious one where she got into a conversation with she had a one-way conversation, I hope, with a squirrel when she was playing like an outdoor concert, and there was like a squirrel in a tree that had distracted everybody next to this stage that she was playing, and she just kind of gave up the gig and just started blethering at the squirrel, and people were like, right, this is funny for a bit, but we kind of paid to see you. I found a New Yorker review from like kind of early or late 90s or early 2000s, and I think they said something along the lines that it's foolish to describe Cat Power as a concert, and they talked about rambling confessions and her talking to a baby from the stage that she spotted in the crowd. I mean, she became almost as famous for this unpredictable madness as she was for any of her actual music. At one point, it was, if you say, do you know Cat Power? Be like, oh, that's the woman that goes mental. And you're like, well, yeah. And so people going to see her were like, is it worth me paying the money if she's just going to be weird again? I mean, she cancelled the entire tour for The Greatest, which was the upbeat album. She cancelled that entire tour and was admitted to a psychiatric ward.
And she'd been drinking very heavily, but she only lasted a few days in there, didn't she?
No, she was in there for a week, but she checked herself out, calling it a pit of hell.
Yeah.
And that she had to recover, but she couldn't recover in that facility. And she's been in and out of hospital, and she was also diagnosed, I think, in 2012 with a thing called angioedema, which is a more traditionally physiological medical condition, but it's somebody who has consistently struggled at the edge with the schedule and with the demands and with the demands in terms of a professional, but also the demands in terms of the emotional and personal, and exposing this much of herself to the public and to people. And I'm obviously very happy that she's made it through up to this point, and it looks like things have gotten better for her. I mean, since 2006, since she got checked out of that facility, her live performances have reportedly cleaned up quite a bit. I've seen her, and it was actually not what I expected. It was a very polished show. There was a piano. It was almost like kind of wine barish vibe on a grand scale, which bodes well for her in terms of her longevity.
Yeah,
personally.
Well, I mean, that's something that as consumers of music, you kind of have to accept, is that maybe the damaged artists are the ones that make great art, but then once they become more rounded human beings and happier, they're not necessarily going to be making the music that you enjoy. So you're just going to have to work out whether you want your artists to be miserable and making great music, or if you want them to survive.
But I was like, it got me kind of thinking about some of the, well, I suppose miserable is one way of putting it, not for all of them, but some of the most downbeat and some of the most emotionally raw music that I like, that I would also love us to look at some point. So, you've got people like Mark Linkous, you've got Scott from Frabbit, you've got Vic Chestnut, Elliott Smith, Chris Cornell, and these are people that made a lot of pretty heavy records, like emotionally speaking, and all of them took their life. And then obviously the other side, that you've got guys like Avicii and Chester Bennington. Avicii, I think it seems like his schedule and his alcoholism and the prevalence of substances and the availability of that seemed like a deadly combination for him. And Chester Bennington struggled with depression, as far as I'm aware, pretty much his whole life. It's interesting as well, like I was looking at that list, so it's like 7 males. I kind of had a little bit of a look behind the scenes, and apparently, certainly in Europe, the male to female ratio of suicide is 4-1, albeit more women reportedly have suicidal thoughts, but men tend to go through it at a far higher success rate. That's an interesting thing to try and track, to try and see where that ties in. There's obviously more men in music anyway, regrettably, but there just are. When you pull out of that and look at that metadata, and you see that 4-1 ratio of men to women managing to successfully kill themselves, and then you magnify that by the intensity of not just the demands and the irregularity of a musical career, but the personalities that it takes to be a successful musician, to be an artist, the kind of eccentricities and personality traits that are most easily translatable into interesting art can also, those seem to correlate to a high degree with people who are susceptible to depression, people who are insecure, people who are lonely, people who are
and also
introverted.
Funnily enough,
extroverted. They hide their introversion via extroversion, if you know what I mean.
Well, funnily enough, I just saw a tweet there from the band Japanese Breakfast, who were just in Glasgow at the weekend. They were just saying, a lot of people say that being on the road is easy, but it's really, really not. It's tough and it takes a lot out of you. Yeah, that's quite often forgotten, especially for, you know, bands of a certain level. Fair enough, if you're an Ed Sheeran or a Coldplay or whatever, you can probably go around
with your
touring
family.
the world with your family and your therapist and your GP, you know, on call.
Was it Foo Fighters turned up? Foo Fighters again, but they turned up at the gig at the Hydro. I think it was something like ridiculous, like 14 buses or something.
Yeah.
Dave Grohl's wife has got a road bus.
Whereas if you're a band selling, you know, going around doing like 400 to 2,000 cap venues, you're out on the road for 6 months and you are away from your doctor, you're away from your family, you're away from your friends. So, you know, it's
I can speak to that firsthand. I've had like serious relationships that have crumbled under that pressure, under the pressure of the scale you're talking about, under the pressure of a partner playing to these kind of 400 to 2,000 capacity venues, yet the budget is not there for you to be with them. And then on the flip side of it, myself touring on a smaller scale, you're having to do 4, 5, 6 weeks at a time just to break even, and so you're communicating by Skype when you can. You're communicating, and it puts a lot of pressure on relationships, and it does. I mean, the longer you're doing that, if you're in a band for 10 years, you're coming out the end of that, and all the friends who had, you know, normal jobs, who used to say to you, "Oh man, it must be so exciting doing this and that and this and that," you come home, they've got children, they've got something they own, they've got property, they've got a partner, they're maybe married, or, you know, there's a sense of stability and groundedness that they have that you as a musician don't have, and you realise that your experiences, whilst sometimes truly remarkable and often wonderful, are very transitory, and there are moments of realisation, and when those moments of realisation are combined with vulnerability, with alcohol, with drugs, and with loneliness or exhaustion, it can lead to things like
inability to, if you are suffering from mental health issues or you know depression, and not being able to go and get medical assistance. Absolutely. Because you're you wake up and you're in Holland one day, you're in Germany the next day. You've got a show every night. You know, when do you take time for yourself? When do you take time to? And
you've got to be up as well. You've got to be on that stage. You've got to be up for it. These people paid. You know, the adrenaline kicks in. You have to be up, and when adrenaline kicks out, that's tough as well. And sometimes the only way to kind of keep going is to take something to replace that adrenaline, and it's a really difficult cycle. And it's not a surprise being involved in that how many people ultimately succumb to that, because we're involved, and I've only ever been involved at a level where the availability of those substances is so low because the money involved is so low, and it was never something we got into. But I can absolutely see how people with greater pressures, greater responsibilities get drawn into that. And let's be honest as well, a number of people in the music industry are only too happy to funnel that stuff to them to keep them going whilst the money is coming in. You know, whilst that record is selling, whilst they're hot, they will be given whatever it takes to keep them on the road. And then when the record sales tail off, maybe then they suddenly stop getting the answers to the agent, and then it hits extra hard. So
we kind of touched upon that a little bit in the Against Me episode as well, purely because, you know, a lot of things that Laura experienced on the road, but also as a recurring theme in the other podcast I do when I'm talking to musicians and stuff, like it's like be suspended in time when you're on the road. Your life is going by often in a really wonderful, fulfilling way, but then you come back home and everything's changed so much, and that's a hard thing to deal with on a regular basis. You only get to go home very briefly, but every single time you go home, something's changed, you know, and the stability that you maybe crave, or that we're told to crave, that you would like, you just simply can't have.
You know, one thing about touring as well, especially if you're touring on a smaller scale, as much as it can be a pain in the ass, but you're constantly in the company of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other people.
You've got no time your own.
You come home though, and as much as you're maybe glad for the first few nights to just get a bit of peace and quiet, that drop off of like, okay, you go from being surrounded by people, waking up with people, meeting people, then you're in your house and it's just you're by yourself and everybody's on their family time or whatever, so the phone's not ringing. That can be hard. I mean, people, I mean, you're not, some people work really goddamn hard for a living in really difficult jobs. I get that, and music seems like a hoot compared to that, and it often is. It really often is. It's often fun. There's not a lot of money in it for 95% of the people involved in it. You know, the people, electricians are making
stable wage,
more, far more comfortable living from it. But the excitement is there, and the novelty is there, and there is that level of aspiration. But at the same time, all these other factors that people in regular jobs perhaps can take for granted, it's not there. Yeah, so I think when stories like Scott's transpire and you see the person, you see he's susceptible and everybody around them is doing what they can, but sometimes there's just nothing you can do when those stars align in that way, and it's horrendous. I'm obviously very glad that Cat Power has survived. I'm maybe, having read her accounts of certain periods in her life, surprised, but glad. Other people haven't been as lucky. To bring it back into the context of the record and not get too drawn out, because we could talk about that for ages. In fact, it's probably worth mentioning before we go back to the record, there's another podcast from friends in Glasgow called Strong Side, and that is a podcast that focuses largely on interviews with musicians.
Yeah, and get people involved in the local kind of music scene, talking about their own experiences of mental health. Yeah,
mental health and music and touring and things like that, and it's a really rewarding listen, so I'd encourage people to go and look that out. It's not nearly as morose as it might sound to people. But
there's also the Help Musicians charity, which is recently launched,
and a lot of this is
which understands the uniqueness of music as a job and as a lifestyle.
And tragically, it takes something like Scott's death for there to be a huge push to raise awareness of this. We can get complacent, and it's only natural. Society forgets about things very quickly, and it takes something as sad as that, as profound as that loss, to really highlight once more that this is still a thing. And whilst everybody can't spend their days worrying about how musicians are all feeling, it's good for the people around them to just to bear in mind that sometimes it just takes a call or a message. So I mean, to drag all that back, as you say, that this is like a really interesting snapshot of a really vulnerable time in this woman's life. Given that it's drawn from such an array of recordings, it's clearly trying to get a message across. And I think it's helped by the fact that Cat Power really clicked, I think, as an artist on the Covers record, weirdly enough, where she sort of learned the strengths and weaknesses of her own voice, of her own playing. I mean, on Moonpix, I think she'd actually played and sang at the same time, which added some of the charm to that. But on the Covers record, she really played to her own strengths. And some of the tunes in that, it's actually a record that's really worth listening. And aside from this, Sea of Love, it's a Phil Phillips cover.
Come with me, my love, to the sea of love. I want to tell you.
Naked If I Want To, which I think is by Moby Grape. And I Can't Get No Satisfaction, which is by the goddamn Rolling Stones, who I hate, except she does the entire tune and doesn't actually say the line I can't get no satisfaction in it, which I thought was a nice touch. There's also a cover of herself on that record, a track called In This Hole, which is on an earlier album and is kind of in a major key, and then on the Covers record she does it in a minor key, and it's beautiful. It's the highlight of the album by a long way. That's really worth looking into. But that In This Hole, more than anything, preempts this album and that kind of somber tone. And as we said, I know we kind of looked at some of those tunes already, but there's some really, really outstanding and subtle moments in this. I mean, the grunge theme is strong throughout, so I think listening to track 2, Free, is that kind of like pretty simplified,
Kind of lo-fi.
lo-fi, grungy riff. It makes really nice use of a kind of offset kick drum, which is a weird choice that really, really works in terms of pushing the song along.
You can feel it from the palm that you're holding on your arm. Cool hands from
It's got some really nice details as well. See when the organ or the keys bit kind of comes down halfway through, it's just a detail you don't really need, but it takes it to the next level.
Agreed,
you know?
yeah.
And it's a really slow build as well, which I really like.
I thought Good Woman was the point, and when I was first listening to the album, Good Woman was the first really genuinely superb track on it, and I kind of worked backwards from that in a lot of senses. Basically talking about ending a relationship before you start letting yourself down.
Eddie Vedder's on that as well with a really good back vocal. It's got a really laid back country vibe, which I really, really dug as well.
It does, aye, absolutely. Fool, I thought, was a really good song. It's got a beautiful chorus in it.
Some great lyrics.
Yeah.
Come along for a direct hit of the senses, you're disconnected.
That's a really nice song. Then it goes into He War, which is the one where Big Dave appears in that drum kit and sends us all into rapture.
You are, he will kill for you. You are, he will kill for you.
That's one. I think it's probably the most upbeat song on the record, all things considered. I thought track 9, Baby Doll, really plays up that freedom theme that you were talking about earlier on. It's one of the quietest tracks on it, but it's one of the tracks where that is most prominent tonally.
Black is all you see. Don't you want to be free?
It's a really haunting vocal as well. Really, really haunting vocal on that.
Yeah.
Which I liked. And the lyrics again, fucking great.
Without a doubt, though, for me, this album, like the jewel in this album's crowns, maybe not track 10.
So we've got nothing to lose. We could all be free.
I think so.
Maybe not is just beautiful. That really simple piano refrain that it's so stripped back. You were saying about her, the blues thing, but without all the kind of ornamentation of blues, the kind of diminishing. It's just so clean and direct and tender. It really reminded me of a track called After the Gold Rush by Neil Young.
Well, I dreamed I saw the silver spaceships lying in the yellow haze of the sun. There were children crying and colors flying.
It's a really simple piano motif that goes through it, and it's all about the vocal performance and the lyrics and the nakedness of the emotion in it.
I think it's really well arranged as well, though. The way that the melody and the piano and the back vocals all play off each other is just sublime.
You're totally right. Aye, absolutely. And I think lyrically that song's beautifully judged as well. There's a couple of standout lines, but the one that I always remember is "We won't have a thing, so we've got nothing to lose." I mean, it's obviously bleak, but there is a touching, bittersweet nature behind that phrase. The kind of the freedom that's implied by it. We've got nothing to lose because we don't have anything.
Yeah.
There's an air of positivity, albeit superficially it looks quite negative.
Well, it's interesting because I read that when I read an interview around this record, and she was saying that she, although she often gets called being quite sad, she often thinks that her music's quite triumphant, which I think plays into some of the lyrics. But
Queen of Sadcore, after all.
Don't really get it.
I think
for me, it's Names, by the way. It's my favourite.
Well,
track.
I was going to say that she can't possibly say that Names is triumphant, though. That's just a catalogue.
Is that about her?
No, I tried to find out if Names was actually based on fictional characters or not. So it's basically just a catalogue of like neglected and abused children.
But Cheryl is like so close to her name.
No, it doesn't really seem like.
And then it switches to we and I towards the end as well. It's really interesting. It's a really fascinating thing to think about, you know. But
I mean, it's
fucking grim though.
it's ultra grim.
Yeah.
Her name was Naomi. Beautiful round face, so ashamed. Told me how to please a man.
I'm just trying to hear so brutal. It's so brutal.
I think that's the saddest point in the album, albeit I couldn't establish whether any of the characters in it are actual characters or whether it's just her creating these scenarios to represent various things. But that's a tough one, especially if you really listen to the words. It's enjoyable. It is enjoyable, but it's hard going. There's a kind of there's like a folkier tune, and there's the Keep On Running. The last, I think 12 and 13 are two of the tracks that debatably could have been left off the album.
Yeah.
They don't bring a hell of a lot more to it. And then it finishes with Evolution, where, as you said earlier on, like it's really downbeat, but Vedder's backing vocals.
It's got this really weird bluesy croon, which you just don't imagine Eddie Vedder having at all. He sounds quite close to Robert Plant almost, like when he does his country stuff.
I don't know, man. I think Eddie Vedder has been a bit of a crooner.
But not in this sense, though. Do you know what I mean? Like not in the pure like deep growly bluesy thing, which I know
Possibly.
I know he's always done that with his vocal anyway, but he sounds like a haggard old man, which is not
He is now, man.
He is now, but he's
How old is Eddie Vedder? He must be fucking
I don't know,
ancient
but
now.
I saw a video of it. There's like a documentary about he's a big fan of like Chicago Cubs, is it? And he does concerts in their stadium every year.
wow.
He's got
He's
that
53.
He's got that weird dad vibe about him. Bless him. Apparently a total sweetheart.
I can imagine. He seems like a Dave Grohl level nice guy.
weirdly, you know how like Cobain had like a big beef with Pearl Jam because they were the corporate version of grunge, but supposedly
Are we talking about grunge again?
we are. But supposedly before he kicked the bucket, Cobain and Vedder actually
Buried the hatchet.
buried the hatchet in a big way, and actually Cobain went on record as saying, "I'm embarrassed about what I said about him. He's a lovely human being." He was a big Vedder fan towards the end. Vedder took his death pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's obviously huge grunge themes throughout this. Whether it's the first track talking about Kurt Cobain killing himself, whether it's Dave Grohl playing drums or Eddie Vedder singing backing vocals, the whole aesthetic is pretty lo-fi, which marks it in contrast to her later stuff. But it is a tough listen. It was a big ask, especially for you, Mark, having no previous frame of reference. Really,
It took a while to get to me, but it did get to me, man.
I mean, as I say, the track Full, number 6, and number 10, maybe not, are the two songs that I think I'll always go back to those. I don't think they age. Some of the rest of it doesn't age as well, but those are.
Yeah, no, I mean, Fool was definitely one for me, but I struggled to listen to it just because it was fucking very sad.
Yeah, I mean, we picked it before events unfolded, sadly, and you know the things were already underway. So,
but I'm happy that I know about it now.
yeah,
And if I ever want to be miserable, this is a
and that
record I will go
she's
to.
as you said earlier, that she made some great records, some very downbeat records, then decided to do something with her career that maybe I don't think is as artistically rewarding, but seems to have put her in a better place. And so, for her own sake, she's still going to be with us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I'd be quite glad to have Cat Power and this Cat Power record in a discography.
Yeah.
Me too. Mark, you've done exceptionally well. Half underwater.
Thanks.
In a pool of snot.
Yeah, I'm drowning.
So, on a slightly melancholy note, we should probably end this episode.
Yeah, go and vote on our
one-
Facebook page. That'd be great.
But I'm going to summon up one last burst of energy to be like, this Sunday
This Sunday,
is the Grunge Mixtape
the Grunge Mixtape
live.
live.
A lot of people are getting in touch saying they're really looking forward to it.
Sunday
I'm
the 27th of May, by the way, just in case you're listening to
2
this.
p.m.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
you know,
I mean,
further down the line.
don't go to the Flying Duck if this is like 2025.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sunday the 27th of May, 2018.
They converted it into a cryogenics lab
Yeah.
3 years earlier, and it's now populated with the bodies of Glasgow City Council after they wiped out everybody.
That's where they now
Dave Grohl.
they make digital Pringles there.
They are a Mobius strip, digital Pringles. They actually, because they went digital, they were able to turn them into a Mobius strips, and you can go and look that up.
Which
and
is
that's
exciting.
an actual exciting bit of geek chic thing that you can have there. And the closer you look at a Pringle, the more wonderful it gets.
Do you know that is actually true? I don't know if my mum's ever is listening to this, but I might have taken a hallucinogenic substance at one point in my life.
Really?
And I looked at a Pringle for about an hour. It was intense.
I have two things to say. One, my ex-flatmate had a conversation with a light switch about Bob Dylan for an hour on a similar substance.
Ideal. Yep.
And two, Pringles, the binding agent in them is apparently the same thing you give to people who've overdosed to induce vomiting, right?
It's the same with Coke.
And it's
Coca-Cola.
and it's addictive.
Excellent.
So that whole thing about once you pop, you can't stop.
It's literally true.
Yeah. So
And
apparently,
it's the same
people
with
have different-
Coca-Cola. Because there's so much sugar in Coca-Cola that they have to put an agent
to
in
bind
it to bind it, because otherwise your body would just refuse it. Because
so apparently that agent, people have different tolerances for it, and my tolerance is incredibly low. So if I pop half a tube of Pringles, I am violently ill.
Oh, really? Is
and
that
that's
true?
why. It's because the stuff they give to junkies and people who are trying to commit suicide.
So
So we've gone full circle.
I could have
excellent.
I could maybe have 3/4 of a packet of Pringles as long as I had hummus.
I actually know people that could eat 3 tubes. Did you just say hummus with Pringles?
Yeah, man. What? Are you
Mark.
joking me? That is
Kill the recording.
So next time we're going to be talking about the record we were supposed to talk about last time, but obviously circumstances got in the way. We're going to be talking about the classic record by Mr.
P.O.S.
Walkers himself.
Yeah.
It's
Mr. Point of Sale himself.
It's
Mr. Peter O. Simmons.
Peter O. Simmons. Yes, we're going to talk about another bit by P.O.S. There are no Pringles on the record, thank God. But we had a jolly good time listening to it, didn't we? I think, did we?
I had a smashing time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, go to the Flying Duck if this is before the 27th, and then if you didn't get in, you're not getting any sympathy from us, right? There's loads of people want to go. You know where to get the tickets. It's unsungpod.net/events. You just put your name down, throw £2 our way, which is all going to good causes, mainly entertaining you guys. But yeah, we hope you enjoy it, and thanks for listening. That was a hefty shift.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.